Hello, all, and welcome to Learning Strategy in Practice, Learning Leader Insights. My name is Dario Minaya with Minaya Learning Global Solutions, and I will be the moderator of this discussion. Joining me is Susan Minaya, COO and Chief Learning Strategist from Minaya Learning Global Solutions, a training services company. With us today is our guest, Andy Lawrence, Vice President of Enterprise Learning and Personal Development and Human Resources at SCL Health. I would like to mention that they both are boasting about 50 years of experience collectively as learning strategists. Although I am the producer, Susan Minaya will be leading the discussion and asking the questions. Listeners, please feel free to comment and add questions to the live chat. We will be looking to answer some of them at the end. So with that, let's jump in. Susan, Andy, thank you for joining this live session today.
Great. Thank you, Dario. And thanks everyone for joining. And especially to you, Andy. You and I have a lot of history together. And I really appreciate you making time to chat today. As you mentioned earlier when we were talking, this is a passion topic for both of us, learning strategies. So I think we're going to have a lot of great conversation today, albeit very fast flipped. So let's get started with it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about really was what are the signs, right, that a learning organization, that there's a strategy needed for an organization. So you're in healthcare right now, and I'm a senior consultant with clients, but we've also been in other industries before, and in learning organizations and led them. And so really from your perspective, what are those signs that really signal, you know what, we really need a learning strategy here? What are some things that you have?
Well, it's a great question, Susan, and it is a passion topic for both of us. I kind of look through the lens of taking a peek at what is the organizational performance, indicating. What's the current return on investment? When I came into healthcare, I've worked in a number of different verticals, much like yourself. Everything from transportation to energy to financial services, telecom, and now healthcare. And healthcare obviously is just top of mind. Those are the two areas, operational performance and return on current investment, that the lens that I look through. I think we have to take cues from operations. Operations in healthcare, are the service lines, it's the care sites, it's the leaders, it's the associates, it's the front line. I think it's important that we stay very, very closely connected to core. And of course, everything in healthcare is about our patients. We happen to believe that we are here to care for the poor and the vulnerable, and at some point we are all vulnerable. I also think there's value in looking, these ideas are both through the lens of looking at the organization as a whole, but also looking at the learning organizations. These are kind of universal components. I look at, is the organization in a growth mode? Is it a defender? Is there competition in the market? Are we a disruptor? Are we innovating? And then turning the lens a little bit more toward training and development, you have to ask, what's the value of training? In healthcare, it's very closely aligned to the academic models, research and development, asking the team, what's the perception, or asking leaders really, what's the perception of the learning organization, or as we refer to it, the community of practice? And then what's the perception of the team themselves? So everything from engagement surveys to what associates are saying, reputation, even who drives decisions in the organization. These are all factors that I think are important for any learning leader, whether you're new to a particular industry. There's that old adage of 1,000 questions and 500 answers. Everything comes back around again. And I think we're both living proof of that.
Definitely so. And, I think from a consultative lens, I guess I would add to that, that often when I'm working with clients, really for me, key indicators, and I know this was true for me when I was a learning leader in an organization, was really signs of just how we're doing from a performance perspective, like you talked about. And so it's like, do we find ourselves being order takers in the learning organization? We're just like, can't catch a breath. And we're just like, have this deluge of demand coming onto us. And it feels chaotic all the time, And I think really, kind of looking at what are we doing? Is the work that we're doing strategic work, or is it really that's helping the organization move forward, or are we just like sitting there churning out training and we have no idea whether we're making an impact or we're not, and so that's a really exhausting and frustrating place to be. And I think for me, what I see, some of the things are really being very understaffed. So we got very lean for a lot of years there. The big emphasis was on ratcheting down on what headcount was needed to be able to support the learning function. But as learning organizations, especially in healthcare, I find it's just amazing to me, like the demand and the constant need for the services, that oftentimes the learning organization can be the most lean in resources to be able to provide those services. And it becomes this horrible place to be for the learning practitioners, because they want to be of service, but they really just don't have the resources to be able to meet the broad demand that healthcare, I think in general, or any organization really has, to be able to support. And then there might not be formalized budget, so I think that these are things for me that I see as signs that we really have to take a look at the learning organization and say to ourselves, really, are we really set up to be successful to support this organization and our mission, which I think is to be an enabler for workforce development and also for the organization to achieve their goals through people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think statistics are telling us that there's significant numbers of college age or college bound members of our society that are choosing not to go to institutions of higher learning for a variety of reasons. We don't have time to really go into all of them, but that's really driving a lot of the changing, as you described. The workforce is changing, and we have to respond to the needs of the workforce. And I was just having a conversation the other day with our CHRO about, gosh, we can kind of take a few cues from history. I don't know if we'll ever go back to the gold watch era of people staying with an organization, but when you look at Ernst & Young and what they're doing with master's programs and MBA programs in-house, because they're just not getting the resources, kudos to them, hats off. We're doing similar things with critical care, nursing practices, and different programs for the ED, and even perioperative services in the operating room.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I could talk about this topic forever, but I want to keep us moving along just in the interest of time. But so for the people that are out there listening to us, I think okay, so we found out that we definitely. We think we need to do a learning strategy. We want to show up differently as a learning organization and be valued for as a strategic partner for the organization. And so, you and I both know, because we've done this before and we've gone through this many times, that, you don't just show up and say, here's my plan.
Right.
There's because it's like, number one, especially if you're not a really well-performing learning organization, or you're just sort of not regarded as strategic, it's sort of, you can be dismissed, right, organizationally, even the best learning leaders, so It's like, I guess what I want to talk about and turn the conversation to is, how might a learning professional gain street credibility? So if I'm a learning leader, how am I going to get that street cred with leaders in the organization to actually listen to me? What are some things that you've done or seen, right, to kind of get traction there?
Yeah, I've been giving this some thought, and I'm going to answer it through the lens of my own experience, because that's what I know. I've come into a lot of different organizations. I've moved different verticals. I think the number one thing is to connect with your customer. Talk their language. Don't talk HR or OD, speak, if you will. We all tease one another about HR math. It's talking their language. And I think what we're trying to get to is find out really quickly what's important to the business and the service lines that you support. And then you cannot get away from knowing your craft. You have to know it inside and out, methods, practice, what's contemporary, what's coming down the line, what's worked in the past, whether it's andragogy or pedagogy, really having that backbone and structure, and then tell your story and tell it early, tell it often, back it up with facts, figures, but hey, those facts and figures have to be meaningful to the business. Susan, you and I both know, because we've been there, we've done it together, reduce time to train, increase representative or associate performance with no loss of fidelity. That's what gets the attention of the C-suite. That's what gets the attention of the service line. And then another component of this is you gotta deliver consistency always and in all ways. Look at all aspects of your business. Look at all aspects of your learning organization, your culture, your structure, your level of engagement, your associate engagement, not only within the learning community, but within the larger organization. And then last couple of things that I would kind of throw out there is you got to move at the speed of business. You got to look into the future, but don't also forget where you came from. Keep your ego in check, because nobody likes a braggart, but you got to sell, and like Patrick Lencioni says, clarity, clarity, clarity. Deliver those results through teamwork and look to your community of practice and build collaboration. Those are just a few of my thoughts.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate those perspectives, and really that consistency component is so critical, and really knowing your craft, right? So I think that happens. It's sort of something that many learning practitioners fall into. They sort of get it somewhere, but they forget that they have to continue to evolve and grow themselves. Mm-hmm. So it's like really people do look to you, or should be able to look to you as an expert for kind of what's the latest trends and how are things being done and how might we be able to keep abreast of that. A couple of other things that I thought about there was really just some simple strategies for learning leaders. So if you can't get that traction, I think all the things that you said exactly spot on, but look around the organization and potentially find a burning platform, right? Find something, this change impetus that you can get on board with and say, I can help you solve this. I have part of the solution for helping us get from here to there where we need to go as we begin to train the workforce in this change, this new system implementation, or this new, whatever it is that's coming down the pike. And I think that's really a powerful way to kind of get in there and get us the appreciation, I think, from leaders that you're there to help. And I also think too, this is, is being your own critic. So go out and talk to people, ask questions like what you talked about. It's like, you really need to ask. Part for me of doing the learning strategy is discovery. I love it because I get to talk to people all day long and find out really what's working for them. And what strikes me is that so many people in learning organizations don't ever take the time to talk to their own stakeholders to find out what's going on, or how satisfied are you, or what do you really think? And I think being forthcoming and just being really honest and putting out there what's working and what's not working, and that you're working on making this a different experience for them.
Totally. I think that that's where that humility comes into play. Be a realist, be candid, be vulnerable. Now, not every organization has those as values, but there are ways to connect with people, I believe, where you can be that business partner. And I think that you hit on a really important component as you're building credibility with the business. Find someone who's a champion. Find someone who you can partner with, and who believes in the possibility the glass is half full. And then, like I said before, deliver consistency always and in all ways.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about gaining momentum, right, and sustainability. So we've got their attention now, right? They're opening the door for us to kind of show up differently with them. And we have this great opportunity. So, what do you think are some of the critical elements to really continue to build credibility, and not just that, but also make it sustainable? Like, so this isn't a once and done thing, like this is the way we are going forward.
Yeah, I'm self-professed high relationship, so I am very much an advocate of dispelling with the drama, the dreaded drama triangle, as they sometimes refer to it. And I think collaboration is the best way to do that. There's always going to be the peacemaker, and that's oftentimes, I think, what learning and development comes in and does. And if we can kind of change that vocabulary, change that experience, usually someone who might be a little bit of an aggressor, really there's an issue or a need that needs to be resolved. And whether or not it's learning and development, because let's face it, a lot of times the solution is not about learning and development, it's about compliance. So collaborating and establishing standards and guidelines, governance. There's nothing more valuable than recognizing that everybody needs bumper guards, and having really clear elevator statements. If, for example, leadership development is your area of focus strategically, get that elevator statement down to something simple like, we're about building leaders as credible sources of information, something that everyone can get behind. And then go deeper and keep going deeper. Ask, there's that ask why 5 times or what five times. Typically, you'll get down to what's causing people to lose sleep at night. And, I think governance, I think collaboration, being really good at your craft, again, kind of goes back to our earlier question. We are the, hopefully trusted advisors. And I know it takes time to build trust, but I think we do that through programs and structure and consistent performance and rinse and repeat. A good instructional objective, statement of task, condition, and criteria every single time, so that the learner knows what's expected of them. The leader is able to say, yes, they came out of training and they were able to do that. And tie that back to what you described earlier, that burning platform for change. Have I got a solution for you?
That's right. I know. I'm definitely on the governance bandwagon. I mean, I have seen time and time again that there's no better mechanism to create the right kind of check and balances, because usually on governance you'll have people from the different stakeholder audiences that you're supporting in the organization, and leadership, and hopefully someone from finances in there too, because they're the people that help you with budget, and the IT people. And I mean, so you have to be very strategic when you're creating a governance board, committee, or however you want to term it. But that is so important, and keeping that where everyone is accountable, because then we start moving to it's all my job to it's our job. So it's like, I can't do this without you. And so, and if we're having issues, let's create a forum where we can talk about what's working, what's not working, and how do we do things differently. And I think, just being, having that transparency and that relationship and that forum that is consistently conducted to be able to do that. I know when I was working a lot with contact centers, I was definitely an integral part of the operations staff meetings. So I would, we would have people that would be there because, I'm responsible. So I'd be there for the VP of ops for all of the contact centers in their meetings. And I was part of that group. And also I would do quarterly results reviews where I would we always had a scorecard, and we tracked the results of all the things that we did. And we would provide a formal report out to them on a quarterly basis. And not to say you didn't meet your goal or your objective. Sometimes you don't know what the goal or objective could be. So why don't you together agree on kind of a line in the sand, and we'll come back and see how it turned out, right? And if we need to modify that goal, then we'll calibrate it and make it, you know, more audacious, or we'll scale it back because we were too aggressive. But I think it's really about getting back to conversations about the work that we're doing, so that you, like you brought it up earlier in the conversation today, it's about collaboration, right? So we all own a piece of it. Let's work on this together and help me help you.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I think there's also that component, Susan, of, you know, as chief architects, because let's face it, I think a lot of what learning and development is moving toward is that architecture. It seems to be a word that's coming into play. I know we're using it even in our job descriptions and our titling, education architect. I think there's also something that we have to balance, and that is, we don't want to have to use terms like dragging people to the finish line, because that just takes way too much energy and it exhausts us, and oftentimes causes us to go right back to what's comfortable or what the organization wants from a historical perspective. You said right at the top of our conversation, you know, that order taker mindset. I boil it down to, sometimes you have to be very strategic about realizing that in order to move people along the continuum of acceptance, they have to want it more than you want it for them. And so finding that, I think, only comes through collaboration and landing on that. You know, one of the questions that I find most valuable, and I've asked it numerous times, is, what is the single biggest burden to the business caused by learning and development? Sometimes we're our own worst enemies. And having those conversations, those real candid conversations, that can sometimes be a real game changer, because folks aren't expecting you to say something like that. It's not disparaging about the learning and development organizations, being a realist. You know, what barriers are we creating? In healthcare, you know, required training, annual required training is a burden. There are, you know, many regulatory requirements, and we've got to start using tools like adaptive learning to be able to, you know, when you've got a seasoned clinical resource who's taken a page turner for the last 14 years, knows how to wash their hands, give them the tools through the technology, the adaptive learning, let them answer the questions, test out, and move on. You still meet the requirements of Joint Commission, OSHA, so forth and so on. You're not, you know, you're really valuing the associate's time. That in and of itself will drive satisfaction. Oftentimes people will even say, wow, you know, I managed to get through that in a lot less time than I thought. That is that reduction in time to train, increase in representative performance with zero negative impact to fidelity. In fact, oftentimes the fidelity is even better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just get nervous about just the dialogue and the conversation, and we go back to that. You and I are both high ovulation, right? we like to interact with people, and I think, you know, it's like that's where it all comes together, right? Is when we're working together for it. And I agree with you. And it's like, what are those types of things that we're doing that we do like mindlessly, but we know we could be doing more efficiently and effectively for the benefit of our learners as well as the organization. Think how much time could be saved using the approach like you talked about for clubbing out, you know, because we still satisfy the requirement, you know. So I think it's really being able to prioritize that. And, you know, when we talk about, so how do we keep it sustainable, and what tends to happen, how do we keep that engagement going? But I think it's really about just being able to stay abreast of trends and being curious, right, in the marketplace about and our industry about what new things are coming out there. And I do think, you know, I know COVID really put the kibosh a lot on, you know, like intact sessions and conferences and things like that, but there's such value in being able to connect with people there, and doing that face to face, or really just reaching out to people to say, hey, do you mind taking time to talk with me? So there's ways for them. I also feel like process, and I think you touched on that, is really critical. So the learning organization from a sustainability standpoint, and really being able to make sure that we don't fall down, is putting the processes in place of how we manage our workflow. How are our teams structured to do the work? How do the requests come to us so that we can monitor them and track them and rationalize them against, is this really necessary, or are we building the same thing 10 times for different audiences? And it's like, so I know for myself with the people I work with, I'm a huge advocate of intake forms, so that we start saying, people have to kind of, you don't just get to ask us for training, you also have to kind of justify the rationale for it. How is it supporting our strategy organizationally? And also just having that visibility. This is where governance, and it isn't always at the highest level. You have your internal team governance structure, so there's different layers of that, right? To sort of filter through things. You got your staff that kind of looks at things and go, well, we're doing this over here. Well, we just did one of those over here, and we're like, why are we doing the same thing 10 times?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. We've done some things internally to, we refer to it as One SEL Health. We've established regional learning collaboratives. That's that community of practice. If it affects me, involve me. So that's exactly what we've done. We're even on the second, or probably now third, iteration of both strategy and governance because of it. We've had executive governance. We've partnered with different organizations. Susan, you and I have chatted on numerous occasions, and I think it's kind of like coaching. Sometimes even thought leaders need to have other thought leaders to share ideas with, and that to me is one of the gifts of a session like this, just to be able to spend some time chatting about a subject that's near and dear and passionate.
Yep. Thank you, Andy. And I know too, we have just a few minutes left, but we do have one question in the chat.
Yeah.
It's directed towards you. And it says, in some organizations, investment in the development of the learning and development team is less of a priority. So what this individual would like to know is, how do you approach the development of your staff so that they're at the top of their game?
A phenomenal question. I'm so grateful to be able to respond to this. We talk in leadership development about intellectual capital being our most important asset and our people being important, and that is absolutely, that is the foot that we lead with here in our organization. I'm very, very fortunate to have an executive team that supports that. Using an existing structure, we were able to, and it was a governance structure. It was our Operational Improvement Council, where we go in and justify expenses for bringing on additional resources. I actually used that environment to go in and sell a instructional design methodology because I felt really strong about building the capacity of our learning and development professionals. And we now have at least 60 of our team members with certified instructional technologist designation, the equivalent of about 140 hours of master's level education. And we made a clear and demonstrative investment. We've continued that investment. We started that investment back in 2013. It's going strong today. The value that has produced is that we have the consistency in our instructional objectives. They have the statement of task, condition, and criteria. We're able to translate those into business benefits. So I would strongly advocate that you've got to continue to invest in the team. I will also say, in full transparency, I'm so proud of this team. We've gone kind of like Continental Airlines, from worst to first. We had a low associate engagement when we first formed. We pulled a number of different organizations together. We created one entity. It was a philosophy. we still have a community of practice. We still have areas of specialty, and we appreciate and value those folks. But we make the opportunity and the education available to all. You don't just have to be a system service or, outside of healthcare, some folks refer to that as corporate. You don't just have to be a corporate learning and development department. You can be, part of the operations training team on the front line and still make use and gain access to that. So I would say in a nutshell, find an existing process, go in, take a risk, show what this investment can do, find that champion. Never hurts to have a little bit of leadership alignment already done before you go in to sell something, and then have a dialogue and sell, clarity, clarity, clarity.
Thank you, Andy. Well, we're at the top of the hour. I just once again want to thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your insights. And I always enjoy talking with you. So hopefully maybe we'll come back again and do another session, I think.
I'd love it. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Andy. Dario?
All right, that about wraps up our discussion. Learning strategy in practice, learning leader insights with Susan Minaya from Minaya Learning Global Solutions, a training services company, and Andy Lawrence from SCL Health. Again, thank you to our guest, Andy, for joining us and sharing your valuable insights. And please be on the lookout for more live streams, especially these sessions from Learning Strategy in Practice, Learning Leader Insights in the coming months. This session will be recorded and it will be posted later on our YouTube and podcast later. Thanks for listening in, and we hope you gained some insights. Until next time.